Welcome to Public Health on Call, a podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I'm Joshua Sharfstein, Vice Dean for Public Health Practice and Community Engagement, and a former health commissioner here in Baltimore. Our goal is to bring evidence and experience to illuminate critical public health issues. If you have questions or ideas for us, please send an email to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes. Today, our topic is the new federal holiday of Juneteenth. I speak to Johns Hopkins professor Janice Bowie, an expert in community-engaged research, about how this holiday should be a moment for celebration, reflection, and recommitment. Let's listen. Professor Janice Bowie, thank you so much for joining me to talk about Juneteenth. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Josh. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think it might help if you maybe introduce yourself to our Public Health on Call audience.
Sure. Thank you again for inviting me to be a part of today's podcast. So I'm Janice Bowie, and I am a Bloomberg American Health professor in the Bloomberg School of Johns Hopkins. And I also have been chairing for the last several years the school-wide DRPH program.
Now, you have done a tremendous amount of work in your career. Maybe describe a little bit of your research.
Sure. So my research has kind of covered three areas. The first really being in the space of health disparities and health equity. I also have done work in spirituality and health, and mostly within the context of community-engaged research and community-based participatory research.
Now, you used the phrase community-based participatory research. It might help for you to explain what that is.
Yes, so we refer to it as CBPR, and it's an approach to how you might conduct your research. It's an opportunity to engage and partner, collaborate with the end users of the research. So we bring together individuals or community organizations to design studies. You know, who do we want to recruit? How do we want to recruit? How do we want to disseminate our findings? And what kind of impact or outcome do we want to have? So it really is an opportunity to share control, to learn from one another, recognizing that we each have skill sets. And so we're going to bring those all to the table and try and learn and conduct our studies so that they're more valid and meaningful to the populations that we're trying to reach.
Great. I know you have been an incredible teacher mentor to so many people in learning how to do that kind of work. Now, I want to turn a little bit to Juneteenth, which is a kind of community engagement as holidays go. Could you just give a little bit of background on yourself and how you became aware of Juneteenth just in your own life?
Yeah, sure. So as you may know, I grew up in the South. We sometimes refer to the Southerners as grits, girls raised in the South. And I grew up during de facto segregation, which meant that it legally had been removed, but that didn't necessarily mean that that's how life was being led for us. So I grew up being aware of Juneteenth, learning about it from family members, from certainly in the space of the church and community organizations, not, however, in any textbook. So, you know, Juneteenth wasn't a holiday that we celebrated per se, but we certainly knew that it exists, as, you know, many other things in the life of Black people and African-American people.
So then in 2021, Congress passes a law and it's a federal holiday. How did that change your perception, if at all, of Juneteenth?
Well, I think that the recognition of the holiday meant that we could certainly, as Black people, and I hope all people, could recognize the value of the contributions of our ancestors, of those enslaved people who finally felt the reality of being free and freedoms, of the emancipation and the end to slavery. I think that for me, it marks that moment that we can celebrate those profound contributions.
So at least part of this is recognizing the sacrifices that people made in the past and the progress that has come. And that part of the holiday is a celebration. Would you say that's fair?
I would say that that's fair, but I would also go on to say that it is insufficient because there are so many issues that remain. So, certainly after Juneteenth and the end of the Civil War, there were opportunities for public education for Black children. There was opportunities for voting for men at that time. And so there were some institutional changes. And as you know, it almost feels like we're still in that same moment today where we are dealing with voter suppression, where we're dealing with racial injustice, where we're dealing with racism. It's something that is in our space every day. And so it's not to overshadow Juneteenth, because we do want to always have opportunities to celebrate who we are as a people and the history and those who fought to give us the freedoms that we have. But it also should be a moment in which we realize that we have continued work to do and that we need to really be embracing all the ways in which we can further the contributions.
In a way, as a federal holiday, Juneteenth really isn't defined. I mean, this is only the second time. And so what I hear you saying is that there's a component of this that should be celebration, but there's a component of this that should be reflection as well as recommitment.
Absolutely. And you said that much better than I would have said it. But that's exactly what I think is critical for us. I also would hope that we can embrace it as a people and not just as Black people, as African American people, but that all people realize that, until there is progress for everyone, there really is progress for no one. We might think that there is, but there really is not.
I think that's so important also, that this is a holiday that everybody should appreciate and take a moment to experience. How do you think that should be done? For example, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, a lot of people volunteer, right? That is at least one way that holiday is expressed. What should be the way that we think about Juneteenth?
I think that we can do similar kinds of things. But what I do think is that everyone should do something. And maybe it is having conversations that are honest and open and authentic. Maybe it is paying it forward in some way. Maybe it's a contribution to helping some community. Maybe it's community cleanup. Maybe it's asking your friends who will celebrate the holiday, how can you be an ally? Maybe it is making sure that voting opportunities are there for everyone. Maybe it is just inviting a friend to lunch and learning more about Juneteenth or learning more about them. I think that there are just a myriad of ways. But the most important thing, Josh, is to recognize, one, what Juneteenth is, why we have it as a federal holiday, and what might you do.
This should be a community-based participatory holiday.
Yeah, but it's really all about how can you move forward social justice and transforming our city, transforming our country in ways that sort of, you've heard many people say that lifts all boats.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bowie, for joining me to talk about this important holiday.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Take care.
Public Health on Call is produced by Joshua Sharfstein, Lindsay Smith-Rogers, and Stephanie Desmond. Audio production by J.B. Arbogast, Holly Cardinell, Spencer Greer, and Matthew Martin, with support from Chip Hickey. Distribution by Nick Moran. Production support from Catherine Ricardo. Social media run by Grace Holes Fernandez and Amber Bryan Singletary. Thank you for listening.